Life gives you an item, and when you follow it, it leads you into trails that you never expected. Grab them. Grab them and don't let go. Because that's what living is. And who knew that if I would be on the boardwalk on a specific day, I would meet a man whose name is Lee Winters, who asks people about their lives, and that from it, the avalanche of things which happened began. But let me go back a little bit, and let me tell you what happened last week. I was with my daughter, Joni, and I was feeling something that everybody, I believe, at some time feels it, a loss of who they are, and not being able to catch up with yourself, and not really understanding what your life is. In my case, it happened at being 95 years old, and quite handicapped. It can happen to a child going from kindergarten to first grade. It can happen in the first days of a relationship. It can happen if a dog barks at you and you run. And so I want to tell you what happened to me. I complained. I said, life is so hard for me now. I love my freedom of being able to walk and to be, but suddenly I'm not allowed to because I'm also handicapped. And I told my daughter that life has become so hard. Instead of a telephone, which your family uses, hanging on a wall, and always being able to go to that phone, we have multiple machines now, and I never know which bell is ringing for whom. Safety is gone in my mind, because my life was a telephone for the whole family. And that was the communication. It's not that anymore. Communication is very hard to deal with. But Hetty, I told you. How did you tell me? Did you check your texts? No, I don't text. Then check them, but I don't know how. And I don't know how to answer. And I'll be with my wonderful iPad, and the next day all the signals are changed. And I want to send to somebody, but the send signal is gone. But I have a phone, so I call them by phone. The time my life takes for me by machines is beyond horror, and I resent it. And all these things I unloaded on my poor daughter and told her. And she said, Mom, what can you do about it? And I said, I don't know. I just am frustrated. And she said, okay, let's figure out. Now you have an aid. 24-hour aids. For 24 hours you're covered because you are handicapped and you're afraid of doing certain things so that you won't fall. Which is sensible, which is true. And she said, but why not pick the things that you could do? And I said, what I want to do is go outside and not have anybody follow me. I want freedom from people to such an extent. I have people looking to see if I fall or don't fall. It's a terrible feeling. So Joni said, okay, let's fix it. All you have to do is to say to people, I need privacy. And I said, yes, especially when I eat. I love to read then, and I've lost my joy of reading. Then say so. Tell people, because they don't know what you need. Learn to speak. And understand that unless you learn how to deal with people who work for you, you'll never get what you need. It's up to you, Mom. And she was right. And I began to think of how I was trained to be ladylike. And that was what women were supposed to be. And why should I be ladylike if it means I can never eat alone anymore and read? Maybe I don't have to be ladylike. That was for a different age. I could say, excuse me, I know you're paid to be with me, but for a little while, I don't need you here. Or if you sit here, don't talk. And Joni said, the world is going to be different all the time. Adapt to change. You have to become master of your life, as long as you don't hurt anybody. Remember when you said to Dad, to Eric, I want to sit on a street corner and paint. And what is it, what he said to you? He said, do everything you want to do, as long as you don't hurt anybody. But do it, because there will come a time when you will not be allowed to do it anymore. And I thought to myself, Eric, it applies for me when I'm 96, 95. And suddenly I was free. Suddenly the sun shone, and I've been doing it. Now, during that time, I was watching a television program.
Do you want me to read what you wrote?
Yes, please.
So Hetty wrote about this, and I'm going to read it. After her conversation with Joni, the day changed me in so many ways that I needed to write about it so I could read and reread it over and over again and let it change me into belonging into the world I now belong to. I was spending a few days in my daughter's home, and we talked about our feelings. I told her how I missed who I once was, how I hated to look in the mirror, and how I hated always being watched so that I wouldn't get hurt. And she heard me and explained ways and plans of how to have my helpful aides who take care of me give me the privacy and see their job as help instead of intrusive. But mostly, she showed me how not to feel like a victim and to take joy in the free time they gave me to enjoy my long years of being 95 years old and able to do the things I once loved in a different way. And I can't wait to begin to do what waits for me in different ways from what I used to, instead of not doing them at all. Thank you, my daughter. I will not allow myself to enjoy being a victim. I shall be a person again. I shall enjoy the new world you showed me. Love you, your Mamacita. And so today you got an Uber app, and tell about what you're going to be doing.
I love it.
She's going to be going to like cafes and restaurants with her aide and sketching people.
Yes.
So that she'll still be in public, out there in the world, sketching real people.
Like I used to.
Like you used to.
Okay. And the next thing I need to speak about is...
Should I read to you the things people said, though?
Yes.
Okay.
I love comments.
Yes. So Kent says, "Hi, Hetty, from Rome, Italy, on vacation with my daughter." And Tammy is watching. And Tammy says, "Hi, Hetty." And Marcia is watching. And Dory says, "Ask not for whom the bell rings. It rings for you." And Mary Nick says, "Hi, Hetty. Hi, everyone. Greetings from Canada." Danielle is watching. And Marion Saturno says, "Hi, Hetty. You look beautiful tonight." And Megan Campbell Frasina is watching. She says, "Hi, Hetty." Oh, Tammy says, "Sketch at an ice cream store." That's a really fun idea.
Yes.
And, yeah. And Dina says, "It truly is an art form to speak up for ourselves with politeness and directness. Why not? Congratulations on your Uber app. Wow, to be you."
Oh, how wonderful.
Amy says, "Hetty, you are just the most contemplative, appreciative, deep, and engaged in your world person that I know." It's so true. And Tibor says, "Watching." And Danielle says, "Good for you. This is great news that you will be out living your life to the fullest." And Amy says, "Your letter to Joni is beautiful," which was then agreed upon, as was Danielle's comment, by other people as well.
Okay. Next chapter. I was watching television about kids who were given full scholarships to, I believe it was Albert Einstein's medical school. And young people who always wanted to be doctors. And they had gotten these scholarships because they're so brilliant. And they spoke about how they will have to work. And I started to think, I have had the most satisfying career in my life, and it earned a lot of money. Why did I never feel that I was working hard? And I realized, because I found a reason to follow a passion. All of you already might remember that when I was 8 years old and faced by Hitler and that world, I thought that if people would know each other, they wouldn't hate, and that I was going to learn to draw and paint everybody I knew, because it's a beginning. When you find out that people are wonderful, the world is yours. And it's what I did in all my life. I drew people, I painted them, I got to know them, and I lost my fear of human beings. And I would not change a day of my life of drawing and painting on street corners and coffee shops and getting to know the world. And I thought there was a passion in me to change the world, and that's why I did that. My art life has been joy, and that every one of us, all children draw. It doesn't matter whether it's a pencil or a pen or a clean wall. or a piece of paper, but they'll scribble. And the longer you scribble, the more you learn, and the better you are. I ask all of you people who need a profession that earns and gives joy, find out what you're driven to touch. Is it a tool? Is it a book? Is it a garden? Is it a cooking? Every one of us has a passion and loves it, but very few take the chance to use it. We don't tell the world, this I am going to do, because the world doesn't know why you want to get your hands dirty with cement when you could take clay. Why you need to cook when you have dishes to wash. Because if you love, if something leads you to loving something, pick it up and use it and shape your life around it. If somebody says, why do you get your hands dirty? Just say, because in order to do what I want to do, it doesn't feel dirty. It feels wonderful. Sit back and think a minute. What were you not allowed to do when you were a child? Look how the patterns were broken. You're not dressed correctly. So the whole world became hippies because a few people got the courage up and dressed like a hippie with orange pants and long hair. And you formed a generation which didn't go to war. You didn't drop bombs. Maybe all of us are given with a gift. And if we use it to help the world and make the world better, then people will love you for it. Not today, but 100 years from now, if you don't mind waiting. I'm very serious about this. When I was doing this stock exchange world, a man, an important man named George Doty, came over to me and said, I would like you to do a series of paintings, but I would like that one that you're doing. And I said, no, I can't sell that one because my family had decided some of the work is going to be important in future generations, and the stock exchange is. And he said, Hayley, that's like my buying a book with the first chapter not there. And if I told you this story before, because it did affect me very much, forgive me, I'm going to tell it again. I did to people in his office, and when it was finished, and I called him to look, he said, who are these people? And I said, Mr. Doty, these are the people who work for you in that office. And before I showed it to you, each of them said it looked just like them. And then I checked with their secretaries, and they also agreed. What don't you find like them? And he said, it's just not them. And I said, let's sit down and work on it until it becomes them in your mind. And we sat down with each one, and he said, straighten the collar of that one, change the pockets, make the buttons show, fix the way the hair is. And what he did was he changed the looks from the hippies I loved to draw into people who worked at the stock exchange. And I said, what happened that suddenly you recognized him? And he said, Hetty, I see linear and you see circular. And I had never heard of that before. And I realized his office is linear. Everything that comes from a machine is linear. I went to art school where I learned that everything belongs to everything. And every curve in your face goes into another curve. And to get a resemblance, the curves have to belong to each other. And since then, I've tested a number of people about seeing linear or not seeing linear. And there is such a thing that has nothing to do with the office you work in. People who see linear are people who want things to be formal and exact. And people who see the opposite see the movements. And that's why art is so wonderful.
Mm. You have a bunch of comments. Should I read them?
Good. I love comments.
Oh, but also that you had said you wanted to ask people to think about what is it that for you is a calling for you, that has that kind of meaning for you and makes it worth it, that
Yes.
you put in that time and that effort. Like what calls you?
Think
And
about it.
Think about it, yeah, and if you want to write it in the chat, she would love that.
Think it's been suppressed all the time. Don't put your hands in the dirt. You'll get dirty. You'll mess the carpet with your shoes. How many things have we put aside because everything produces dirt?
So Danielle Gruss says, good for you. That is great news that you'll be out living your life to the fullest. And Amy said, your letter to Joni is beautiful. I might have read those already. Julie says, such sage advice as always. I'm going to share your thoughts about choosing a career based on passion with Charlie. Thank goodness for all of us that you decided to follow your art. Love you. How fabulous, Julie. Mary Nick says, you are the ambassador for peace, Hetty. You are an inspiration. Michelle says, hello, my dear Hetty. I love you. Dory says, just to expand on the Albert Einstein college story, it was made possible by $1 billion gift from Ruth Gottesman, and tuition will be free for students in perpetuity. Michelle says, hi, Ken. Dina said, how did you feel when he asked you to change your interpretation of how people looked at the stock exchange?
I felt, now I understand what I never understood before.
And Yola says, hello, my dear Hetty.
All I want to say is I love you all. Look what art gave me. It gave me a partnership in your world.
Martha Bilski's here. She says, hello. Amy says, Hetty, I promise I'm not minimizing what you shared with us all, how your life is now harder for you. I'm positive we all respect that. And you're sharing your vulnerabilities, like having trouble walking and requiring aids. But may I humbly point out one thing you may be selling short. Your brain is so sharp, and that outweighs having more useful legs, in my opinion. What a gift, your brain, that is sharper than most, even in their youth.
May I answer this?
Yes, and Danielle says, Ken, my name is pronounced Russ with a G in front, so Gruss. Got it, Danielle. Dina says, your artwork gave us you. What a blessing that Eric would frame your passions. And Marcia says, we are blessed to have you in our world.
Kenny says I have only 1 minute. I promise next week I will fill that out. The biggest gift I have gotten lately has been Kenny teaching me how to meditate. I meditate. I never used the word God before because it's been so mutilated by so many people who want war and ugliness, who created a God. But Kenny, I asked him, how does he always know the questions to ask? And he said, I meditate. And I said, teach me. And he does. And every night, he and I meditate. And when he's not there, in the middle of the day, I'll stop short when something bothers me and sit down and think of the God that created the world I'm in. And I say, thank you. Help me to understand why this happens. And then I think, and I realize there are reasons. If they fail, it's because I did not apply them correctly. I did not yet learn how to take a day of ugly rain and understand it makes the flowers grow. And Kenny is looking at the clock, which means see you next week.
Oh, but let me just say, Michelle says, ditto to so many of the comments above. Love to all.
What? Is it over? I love you all. Good night.